Welcome to Voices of Innovation. I'm Cecilia, founder of the Catalytic site, where I guide scientists as they move from academia into biotech. Join me as I speak with entrepreneurs, researchers, and talent leaders driving innovation and building the companies of tomorrow. If you are considering a career in biotech or simply want to understand the sector from the inside, this is your new favorite place. Hello and welcome back to Voices of Innovation. Today's episode is about a situation that many highly trained scientists find themselves in. The moment where you are told that you are overqualified, but at the same time you are missing the one thing that everyone seems to want, an industry experience. My guest today is Flavia Fico, a cancer biologist with a strong background in translational oncology and immuno-oncology. And over the past few years, Flavia has been working in Geneva, in Switzerland, on tumor microenvironment interactions and resistance to immunotherapy in breast cancer models. So she has a very solid scientific background. She's very close to the clinic and very relevant to industry. And yet, like many people coming out of academia today, she's navigating a job market that often doesn't quite know what to do with profiles like hers. Flavia, thank you first of all for coming to the podcast. And let's start from the beginning. Can you tell me more about your career journey so far and what led you to start thinking seriously about the transition into industry? Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for inviting me. I think this is a very good opportunity, and the idea is really to try to help other people who are facing the same challenges right now. So, yes, I got my PhD at the University of Freiburg here in Switzerland in 2020. I was leading a project dealing with cancer stem cells in the context of breast cancer. It was more basic type of research. And then afterwards, I went for a postdoc in Geneva, and it was a bit more of a translational project here. We were collaborating with a doctor at the University of Lausanne, working also at the hospital. And then, of course, during my postdoc, I started to think what I should be doing next. And I really started in advance to participate to career days, to try to network with people via LinkedIn, but not only via LinkedIn. And also I started to be exposed to the industry type of world by being enrolled in some program. And I started to think, okay, I think this is now the moment I can use my knowledge and my skills to work in a bit different way, let's say, in a different field.
Flavia, I decided to invite you on the podcast because I came across one of your posts on LinkedIn that really resonated with lots of people. I think you got lots of traction there. And in this post, you were talking about exactly this paradox, being overqualified, coming out of academia with a postdoc, with a couple of postdocs actually, and still finding very hard to find your first position in industry. Was there a moment that made you think, okay, this transition is actually harder than it should be?
Absolutely. I mean, it is undeniable to admit that some days you really feel frustrated about the whole thing because I was a bit more optimistic this time. Since I started to work on this transition a long time ago, I was really hoping that, okay, as soon as possible, I will finish my contract at the university and then I will find a job within a few months. But this didn't happen. So it is also true that we are living a very difficult time, also politics and economics. I mean, we know what's going on right now, right? So many people have lost their job in 2025. And of course, these people are competing with people like me now. So it's getting more and more difficult. And I think because of this, and also another reason is the fact that Switzerland is a relatively small country, this is contributing to all the difficulties the difficulties that myself and other people are facing now. So sometime, I mean, it is really frustrating, and I could see that many people relate with this feeling because although we try, to put a lot of effort, sometimes you ask, okay, there is something I could do better, or should I do differently, right? So
Yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. And you said very correctly, it's a very crowded market at the moment. Not many opportunities going on, and also it can get quite competitive. And especially, of course, if you are focusing your efforts in Switzerland, for example, and smaller location, of course. Is there a feedback that you hear more often than not?
Definitely. One of the issues now is lack of experience or lack of hands-on experience because
Yeah.
we do have a lot of experience as scientists, right? I mean, I've done my PhD, I've done the postdoc, but the reality is I've never worked outside the lab. And this is what counts most of the time, right?
Mhm.
So that's the feedback I get more often, the fact that, okay, people can have a lot of trust, but sometimes they need to hire someone who knows already the job in order to learn and to work faster as well, right?
Yeah.
Um, and another feedback I receive is the language, because that's another very important point. I mean, knowing French, knowing German. I mean, English is of course, I mean, standard, but here in Switzerland, I mean, if you would know the four languages, that would be ideal, but it is very, very difficult that someone who's not Swiss, on top of that, know
Yeah.
fluently the four languages. So that's another point to consider, absolutely.
Do you have any personal strategy around this language barrier? Like, of course, learning the language that you need, but also in terms of role selection or company selection as well.
So what I'm definitely doing myself, I'm investing money and energy in
Mhm.
French courses because I know that German it's really another topic. I should start from zero
Yeah,
basically, while I already knew French. So I'm refining my French skills because I think this can help me right for the current market, even rather more than investing money in getting a lot of additional certification. I
yeah,
don't say that this is useless, absolutely. I mean, I all the time encourage people to learn more. Even myself, I'm trying to get in touch with what it's going on now in the industry, which are
yeah,
the certification that have more values. But personally, if you need to invest some money, I think languages is really priority, especially
absolutely.
living in Switzerland, of course.
Yes, I've seen it with candidates from Germany, for example. Germany is another country that select candidates and profiles based on language, but also, in other countries in Europe. So yes, definitely trying to be aware of that barrier and not to overcoming as you can, and to dedicate enough time maybe when you are finishing your PhD, or maybe you have a postdoc, you still got 1 year or so, you got enough time to think about it without panicking. I think it's also important.
Absolutely. If I can add just something,
Yeah,
of course, it also depends on companies, on corporates,
yeah,
right? I mean, there are some companies that are bigger and more international. And in these companies with English, especially if you are in the R&D, then you
yeah.
could survive pretty well. But otherwise, it starts to be very challenging. Yeah, that's my feedback.
And you mentioned the fact that you're also considering non-R&D roles, and that maybe bring back the requirement for not having just the English language as a skill, but also the languages, of course, are used within your country, more important, more relevant. What kind of roles are you considering at the moment?
Yeah, that's a super, super good point because what it sounds a bit more direct and it makes more sense is in fact R&D, right? Because
Yeah,
that would be more translation of a location and the place where to work, but not really the topic, right? Or the way
yeah,
of working. Myself, I was certain that I really wanted to say goodbye to the lab work, to the wet lab, let's say,
yeah,
right? So right now I'm considering roles in the clinical research.
Hmm.
Definitely an entry level position is the clinical research associate. So
Yeah.
in the future, then a more clinical scientist type of position. But even in the medical affair, that's a super interesting area. Medical science liaison is
Yeah.
usually an entry level for
Yes.
after medical advisor or other type of position, as well as medical writing, I
Hmm.
would say. So that's a bit the idea. Yeah.
With the scientific expertise that you build in academia, you can really, apply it in so many different directions, which is super interesting. And maybe some, usually academics don't really think about transitioning into all these different sectors. That's true. I think, like, of course, it kind of de-risk a little bit the transition into industry if you first go into R&D, because as you said, you already know how to do experiments, you know how to think, about a research project, etc. Although there are differences within academia and industry, but there is a world out there, lots of different opportunities and options in terms of careers. So yes, I think it would be very interesting for you to explore these options. Which skills from academia do you think that are most undervalued in industry and you can still use in those non-R&D positions that you're targeting?
A lot. We really do have a lot of transferable skills. And as you just mentioned, we don't think about it
Mhm.
because we are so focused in delivering our project, we are so focused in working hard all the time and be convinced that our life is wet lab and maybe okay analyzing presenting our data, but we don't think that all of these things can actually be transferable. For example, organization, I mean, that's key, right? We do have a lot of organization skills. We navigate between doing experiment, handling meeting with our boss, organizing presentation for the lab meeting, for conferences. Another very good skills is the project management. I mean, now there are plenty of courses, and I do know that in the CV, for example, adding a certification that can help a lot. But
Yeah.
even without that, we do have the capacity to lead the project, to mentor people, to organize tasks. I mean, this is super valuable for me. And others are, for example, resilience, the capacity to adapt, the capacity to be flexible, to completely rearrange the plan because results are showing something completely different, right?
Yeah.
So you have to be a very you have to take decision very fast, you have to apply the critical thinking. So we really have to give more value to these transferable skills, and also learn how to sell ourselves better.
Yes.
So how to put this in the CV, right?
Absolutely. You mentioned lots and lots of valid points. And I think circling back to the project management, absolutely. Like if you can do a certification, if you're interested in going to that career as well, that's an option. But also, you can apply those skills in many other roles. But at the same time, something that I always advise academics to do when preparing themselves for industry interviews is to look at their project, their research journey that they've done so far through the eyes of a potential project manager, because they already, manage timelines, budgets, coordinating, collaborations, and working maybe with external partners, or maybe, rebuilding a part of the lab, or, instruments and so on. So there are lots and lots of areas that you already cover as a project manager. You simply don't see it, like you described it in a different way, and that's super helpful. And something that you also mentioned, like is being able to properly communicate your value beyond the scientific project that you led or you contributed to when in academia. So you need to find the right words, the right terms to reshape it, basically, without making up things, but simply looking at what you've done through the eyes of the project manager, and being able to also translate the impact that you generated into, I don't know, bullet points, for example, to showcase what you can do in a specific role, in a specific industry, in a specific companies is always very valuable to do before, an interview or before preparing your CV to apply for a role. And of course, since you are actively applying to roles, I'm sure that you have already interacted with recruiters, which can be sometimes not a very pleasant experience, unfortunately. And I speak as a former recruiter here. But what was your experience with recruiters so far?
That's a very important topic, as you said, and I hope this conversation can really help, to reinforce this conversation between people who are looking for job and recruiters, because I think it is super important. I mean, they are the people who are screening our profile and somehow who are deciding for our future, right? So there are mainly two problems. Most of the time it's a bit difficult to reach out. Um, Probably because they are very busy. I can't believe that many people are writing them, many people are trying to reach out via LinkedIn, via mail, and I think for them it can be a bit challenging to
Mhm.
reply to all of us. So
Yeah,
that's a first point. And sometime I've got a bit a very sharp reply in saying that they are looking for a certain profile, and maybe by looking at my profile I miss this. I don't wanna say that it is a detail, but I'm missing one of the skill, one of the competencies that they are looking for,
yeah,
because it is very rare to be hired for potential. And I think
yeah,
that most of the time in small companies, it's hiring manager who are handling the hiring process, and maybe they want to have more control on the people they are recruiting. For big companies, they rely a lot on recruiters, which is very good. But sometimes they don't look behind the lines, right? They don't look for potential. They are interested. Do you have experience in this specific thing? Do you have this certification? And if you don't, it is very difficult to try to convince them. So I think we should work on both sides, meaning us trying to improve our cover letter and CV, make it more appealing, tailoring and fine tuning for industry job or even for hospital, but I'm saying without outside academia, and then making an effort to try to learn more about the person, because maybe it is a valuable worker, right?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I think it's very important both for the companies that are, of course, hiring recruiters to search and scout for profiles for their job opportunities, but also for the candidates they are, reaching out to recruiters to look for people, professionals that are working specifically for the life science space. It could be for bigger organizations, it could be for biotech and smaller startups, but they have the knowledge about the market, about the skills required, about the potential. They are used to work with a PhD and postdocs, so they see as an added value definitely. And not like, of course, you are, a little bit senior here. You stay in academia for too long. Maybe you are not relevant anymore for that industry role. So they really need to be able to understand also. I don't know if you are in R&D, for example, the techniques that you perform during your research projects, to understand that for the specific topics there are areas that are more hot in terms of modalities, for example, and that if you got that level of experience, you can apply it also in slightly different areas as well to transfer that knowledge. So it's super important. Working with professionals that are specifically expert in that space, and you can also get lots of insights in return if you find people there. Of course, I got, as you said, the time and the space also to have those conversations. Always try to set them up. It's not easy, as you mentioned, because I know it very well. Like they are working on, I don't know, like 5, 6 different projects with hundreds of applicants for each, and they are looking for specific, skills and expertise, and it can be very daunting. Have conversations all day long. So to add additional conversations on top of that, where those are not related to a specific openings that they have, may feel like too much to them. But if you got
Exactly.
the chance to have those conversations, or if you are contacted by a recruiter to speak about a specific position, always ask them insight about the market, about the sector that you want to enter,
Yeah.
how is it going in terms of companies, financial point, circumstances and everything. You can learn a lot about the sector by having those conversations because they know a lot of the behind the scenes basically for these companies, and not all the insights and data are publicly available or easy to find at least.
Yes. Yeah.
And of course, it happens quite commonly to be ghosted as well. I know that this is a big problem for the recruitment industry. Have you ever had experience of being ghosted yourself, your applications?
Yes, quite often. In this case, I think it hurts, right? Because
Mm,
of course, it's our duty, it's our responsibility to find a job, and it's on you to spend the time and energy in
yeah,
preparing your documents, right? Because this is what it takes, simply speaking. But since you put a lot of effort, and personally, I've invested time with a career advisor at
uh-huh.
University of Geneva. We did a lot of work together, for example,
Yeah,
for fine-tuning my CV and cover letter. Then every time you send an application, you really are are at least hoping that people come back to you. So okay, most of the time it happens, but with automatic email of
yeah,
rejection, which again, it's a very frustrating experience, but with big companies, it happens very, very often. And other times they just never come back to you, or maybe you write the reference person, even indicated in LinkedIn,
yeah, and
about the
nothing
status
happened.
of your
Yeah,
application, but they just don't come back to you. And of course, there is part of me who accept this as part of the process, and part of me who sometimes I try to insist a little bit, because you never know, right? It can also show
yeah,
that you are interested in
yeah.
the position, but sometimes you just need to let it go. So it's really hard to find the balance, I would say.
Absolutely. Following up is always a good idea, as you mentioned. Maybe I would stop after 2 or 3 attempts because, of course, you don't want to be seen as too persistent. Or
Yes.
also, it may be that, yeah, simply there is no interest on the other side, and therefore there is no point in, continuing to trying. But at least 1 or 2 follow-ups, I would say that it's good because again, people are so busy. They see and speak with candidates like all day long. So even if they spoke to you, I don't know, or you send the application the week before, like they may seen it and say, yes, this could be a good candidate. But then they've seen other, I don't know, 20 people, and it's difficult also to compare. Also, something that I would suggest people to do is to always stay relevant to recruiters. If you already had a first conversation with them, something that I would suggest candidates to do after maybe having had the first conversation with recruiters, or maybe after having sent the CV for review, is to again follow up, because also the requirement for the positions may actually change during the selection process, because the company, maybe hiring managers within the company has started to have those conversations with the first batch of candidates, for example. They realize they need a certain skills, a certain expertise that they didn't consider originally, that then now becomes much more relevant. So it may be that even if you had a conversation early on and maybe you weren't selected, send an email maybe after a couple of weeks, or a week or so, to see, to reiterate your interest, of course, in that role, and to see if anything happened in terms of requirements, because
Yes,
sometimes that's the case.
true.
You can be successful. I've seen it happen before.
Yes.
And you mentioned, of course, networking in person on LinkedIn. Like networking in Switzerland, how it really works? Like, what have you learned that you didn't expect?
I would say in the last couple of years, I learned a lot. And what I did personally, Of course, I do use LinkedIn a lot.
Mhm.
That's for sure. But I tried also to meet people in the real life, right?
Yeah.
So, for example, I was attending career days. This is a very good opportunity in Switzerland as well
Mhm.
to meet people because you never know. I mean, I've reached out, for example, to someone lately and just say, hey, we have met at this event. I was interested in the company where you are working,
Yeah.
and now I've seen a position. And to be honest, when people meet you in person, it's different, right?
Yeah.
So that's why I think the period of unemployment sometimes it is very hard and it's frustrating because you feel like you're at home all the time. I
Yeah.
mean, sure, you are at home a lot, but personally, I'm still trying to register. A newsletter, for example, of association, BSNL here in Switzerland or
Yeah.
PharmaCamp. These are associations that very often organize either a career event or even visit of companies that
Mhm.
otherwise I would never manage to do by myself. So this is a very good opportunity to meet people.
Yeah.
Um, and then, of course, reaching out via LinkedIn, it is a very good idea. Over the last 2 years, I've met quite a few people who were very kind and they still remind me. Some other people never replied, but I think it's part of the process, right?
Yes.
But at least you try. I mean, you try to be very proactive and people appreciate that.
From your PhD, you've done, a couple of postdocs after that, but you experience academic life in Switzerland across multiple institutions, right? What do you think that Swiss universities do offer, which is beneficial to academics that are looking to make the transition? You mentioned, for example, that you work with a career advisor within the university setting, anything like that in previous institutions as well.
Yeah, I think that currently there is more attention to this because
Mhm.
I think that before staying in academia, and then after the postdoc, try to reach this principal investigator step, and after associate professor, and so on and so forth, was the plan A for
Yeah,
people who have done at least a PhD. But I think that now, luckily enough, we are a bit refining this way of thinking, and we don't speak anymore about plan A, plan B, but just about career paths, right?
yeah,
More
yes.
generally. So, for example, now at the University of Geneva, there is this service. So you can refer to these people. They can try to help you, for example, making a bit more appealing your LinkedIn profile, or just
Hmm.
work with you on your CV and your
Yeah,
cover letter to try to make it a bit, like more suitable for
yes,
positions outside academia. And as well, once a year, I think we had this day dedicated to postdoc, where people speak about. In fact, all the possibilities that we have after postdoc, so going more into the journalism, for example,
yeah,
communication, or teaching, or as I said, the clinical research or medical affair. So I think that now people are learning more and more about different options. So that's not bad. I think we are still a lot to learn. Myself, I have learned a lot of things by just being curious, for
yeah.
example, but the universities now start to be more aware about the transition. Yes.
That's amazing. I think that, for example, here in the UK, universities like Oxford, Cambridge, and those in London, of course, are much more able to offer this kind of services. While I see, for example, here in the Northeast, or outside the Golden Triangle, you still see, not the level of support offered by university. But it is critical because if you don't know about,
Of
career
course.
options, for example, how can you prepare yourself? Well, even ask yourself, would that be something you are interested in doing? And of course, like practical tools like CV, LinkedIn revision, stuff like that are necessary. At some point, you need to go through it and
Absolutely.
optimize it for industry rules specifically. You also mentioned the fact that you are using LinkedIn, of course, for your networking. And I wanted to touch on something that I think you're doing pretty well already, which is using LinkedIn not only for networking, but also to document in a way, show your personal journey, looking, of course, for opportunities and advice, but also to document this career transition and, of course, all the challenges that you are facing, but also, the positive aspects of, being able to explore a new career, especially, a non-R&D career. How did you realize that this could have been like a great way to show your personal side?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, now LinkedIn, I think we both agree with that, is quite polished, right? It tends to be a very perfect network for job. I mean, and it is. This is very good. But I do this also to remember that there's human behind jobs
Yeah,
and application, right? And it is also very nice to reach out to people, to really say, hey, I feel you, I'm experiencing the same problem. And some people reach out to me to say, do you want to chat, about this? What is your experience? And I know it is somehow a bit risky because you expose yourself a little bit every time you criticize a bit the system, or not criticize, but even exposing that you are facing some challenges
yeah,
and this could be done a bit better, or we could try to improve this. it,
yeah,
it is a bit risky all the time, but this is also important because at least the people are more aware of what is going on,
yeah,
and criticism can actually be beneficial, right? To maybe start thinking, okay, that there may be something that it is not working 100%. We can try to collaborate and to work together to improve this situation. That's mainly the reason why I do this. And also because sometimes when people are, like facing the same problem, or they are in the same phase of life, sometimes they can have great ideas and start collaborating, and projects
yeah,
start out of thing. Maybe
absolutely.
just sharing, okay, I'm unemployed as well, I'm trying to look for a job in this area, but do you also have in parallel other ideas to invest on something? And you never know. So I've been always very open to this and very curious. And so I was thinking, okay, let's don't make LinkedIn just a place either to complain, or either to look for a job, or to reach out to
Yeah.
recruit, but also to be active in this sense.
Absolutely. And I think, first of all, it's much more common now to also, talk about personal stories, personal journeys, again, the challenges that you're facing. And you said it, not just to complain a little bit about certain situations, which is still fair, but also to raise the point that maybe there are things that are not working, maybe there are different ways of doing things that could be, could work better. So that's absolutely important. Also, to not let people feel too lonely in the challenges that they're facing, because again, as we said at the beginning, we are facing like quite a difficult time for specifically the life science sector. Lots of people are in this situation. They could be junior, transitioning for the first time, or maybe even more senior and going through redundancies, and companies that are shutting down, or maybe bigger organizations that are shutting down their pipelines in specific indications. So it's very common, unfortunately, to be in this situation. Well, at the end of the day, LinkedIn, something that I always say, is a social media, and we can use it in a positive way to connect with people again, thinking about projects that can start, like it happened to me a few times in the past, to actually start working with people on side projects, then led to something else much more meaningful, just through connections here. So it's really powerful tool. Um,
Yeah.
Last question to you. Well, as I discuss it with candidates, with students that come to me asking for help on how to use LinkedIn to their advantage. For them, the challenge is how to write about themselves. Like they are usually quite shy. They can talk about their science, but not really about their personal journey. Any advice that you would like to give them to start?
Absolutely. I was about to say impulsively, don't be shy. This is not the moment to be
Yeah,
shy. I mean, it's perfectly fine that there are some people who are more introvert, right?
Yeah.
And they have more difficulties to reach out to people who have never met before. I mean, that's absolutely fair. Myself, I mean, I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy to reach out, but I understand it's not the same for everyone. Problem is you need to position yourself very well, and in order to do this, you really need to show at least to be very interested in this job, very interested in making a career. You are very proactive, because unfortunately there is so much competition that if you don't try to push a bit yourself, then it's gonna be very, very, very difficult afterwards. Everyone has his own personality, and this is perfectly fine. Myself, I'm more an extrovert, but this is, I mean, someone can be more shy or timid, but when looking for a job, you need to show that at least you are doing everything
Yeah.
in your power to get the job. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. And look at me, I'm very shy, personal life. I'm doing a podcast, so everyone
Absolutely,
can
that's
try to
great.
push a little bit their limits and see what happens.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
Thank you, Flavia. It's been a pleasure to have you here. And we had a very insightful conversation. So thank you again for joining the podcast.
Thanks a lot. It was a pleasure. Thank you. Thanks.